Good day, students. It is me, Saul's, or it is my voice, I should say. I would have done a video recording with my little face in the circle on the screen so you could see me talking. However, I woke up this morning and said, you know what? There is no reason to shower and get ready. So I'm sitting here on my bed in my comfy clothes. My hair's messy. My face is scruffy. And so I thought, man, no camera today. I hope you guys are all doing well, trying to navigate this crazy life that you're in right now. Um, we do miss you guys. Keep studying, keep reviewing. And by April 3rd, we should know more as far as what you actually need to be studying and practicing. But for now, I thought it'd be a good idea to review periods. This will be structured similar to the lunch reviews that we were doing. It'll be like the whiteboard, and then there'll be some terms you need to know, and so on and so forth. But at the end, it's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a short answer question that relates to period one that I hope you guys will practice. I will go over some AP skills that you need to know going into it and kind of show you how they apply to the question, because these skills are found throughout the exam, and I'm assuming they'll use these skills when they release the new exam that you guys will be doing, the Corona exam. So let's get started. This is period one, 1491 to 1607. Now I know that we've already reviewed this at lunch, but not everyone could attend. Now everyone can attend because you don't really have much of a choice. So let's talk about these dates real quick. 1491 is kind of like the date that they decided to start. It's kind of the year before Columbus makes his discovery, so kind of is the kickoff to exploration into the New World. And then it goes to 1607, which is right at the start of English colonization in North America with Jamestown. So what we cover in all of this is Native American cultures, kind of who was here first, how they got here, the regions, and then Spanish conquest and Columbian exchange. So we will cover that today. I hope it helps you guys, gives you a little confidence going into the Corona exam that we'll have come May. Of course, I will put on here that you can ask questions. So after you watch this, if you have period one questions, go ahead and submit those, and we will do our best to answer those to help you understand this a little bit better. So let's go on. Okay, so the first thing we want to talk about is the first Americans, kind of how they got here, why they came here, and how long they've been here. So the land bridge is kind of the main topic that kind of helps us understand this. So it's the land bridge that connects Siberia and Alaska. So if you look at a map, lucky for you guys, I have this little paintbrush. So if you were to look at a map, I actually don't know how long it's going to stay on here. So if this is Alaska and then you have Siberia, they were like coming down here and migrating throughout all of the North and South America. So earliest North American residents crossed between 15 to 30,000 years ago. So that is, in the bigger picture of time, that's not too long ago, but it is a long time ago. So they came here following animals. They were hunter-gatherers, and the big woolly mammoth would be tromping along, or the sloth bear or something, and they'd be like, we want to eat that guy. So they would just follow him, and slowly but surely they just kind of pushed their way into North America and then eventually into South America. And then by 9000 BC, BCE, they settled in the southern tip of South America. So that's kind of their arrival. They dispersed as they were coming in and migrating throughout North and South America. So they would disperse and form their own tribes and villages. And we'll focus a lot on the tribes or the communities in North America. If you could hear that scream, that was my daughter. So that's so fun for everyone. So the cultural regions, these ones are important to know and to remember. just in case you need to use them as, evidence or to show your knowledge that you do understand period one and the Native American tribes that were here. So let's go through these real quick. You have the Pacific Northwest. If you need a bearing as to where that was, that's like Washington, Oregon, California, specifically like Northern California. So they did a lot of fishing. The rivers were full of salmon, allowed them to have a pretty dense population around these areas that provided food and fuel, and and then you had thick forests that allowed them to use the timber there for boats, housing, firewood, and just supported their life. And then you go to desert Southwest, uh, southern Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, parts of Nevada. Very dry, and this is where you kind of first see the pattern of corn, beans, squash, melons. Um, those crops are very tolerant to terrible growing conditions. So that's why a lot of these native tribes probably depended on them, especially if they could not, catch the buffalo or catch the fish. They could always grow their corn and beans and melons, and that's kind of where Three Sisters farming comes in. Again, I'll use my nifty little paintbrush and we'll switch colors to green. You have your corn stalk, boopy doo boop, and then you have your squash down here growing around, and then the beans that grow up along the corn stalk, and so that's what makes people happy and allows them to eat. Great Plains, kind of Midwestern United States, they did follow and hunt and utilize the buffalo. They too also grew corn, squash, and beans. Eastern woodlands, so now we're coming the East Coast, lots of trees, same type of food. This is like the New York area. And these tribes we actually do focus a lot on when we talk period two with their interactions with the English colonists. So just know and understand these different regions. If you need to go, if you feel like you need to look at these in more detail, go ahead and do that. There's resources online out there. And then, of course, the things they have in common. They lived in families. These families had lived in communities within these regions, and they were very spiritual and religious. And that's why when we talk about Pope and the Spanish kind of enforcing Catholicism on him and the Pueblos, they get mad at Pope gets mad at that because they depend a lot on what they believe in, and they don't want that to change. Okay, so that's cultural regions. Let's get into the Spanish conquest. So this is kind of the meat of period one. As far as the normal exam, you see a lot of like Columbian exchange, Spanish encomienda. So this is the meat of the period. This is some good stuff to know. So let's talk about Columbus. Remember, he was looking for Asia originally. He said, you know what, there's a quicker way. So he said, I'm going to sail west. And he did, and he ran into some islands, assuming that was, in India, the Asia area. And what he found were a bunch of natives. He was not super friendly to the natives. He proposed to Christianize the indigenous population, regardless of what they were believing in. And he felt like we need to send in the missionaries and kind of force these people into believing in Catholicism, seize their mineral wealth, and exploit their labor. So here are a group of people that we can use to work on different plantations, eventually mine in these gold mines and these silver mines. He really did not respect or learn much about their culture. He was only looking at them maybe through a how will this benefit Spain sort of lens. So his arrival sets the stage for more exploration and colonization, especially by the Spanish. Um, there are the Portuguese are are exploring. You know, the Dutch are exploring, but the Spanish really make a push into the New World. So we're going to focus on them and maybe talk a little bit about the Dutch, maybe in period two if we feel like the Dutch need any of our attention. Okay, so Cortez and Pizarro are kind of the big players. Cortez conquered the Aztecs, Pizarro conquered the Inca Empire, which were two very advanced civilizations in the New World. Spanish come in, use their advanced weapons, their horses, their ruthlessness, and kind of just decimate these amazing civilizations. And of course, diseases plays a part in the fall of these civilizations. And we'll talk more about diseases here in just a minute when we talk about um, the Columbian Exchange. So Cortez Pizarro kind of set the stage of this conquest throughout the New World, specifically in like South America, Central America, Mexico, where they just overwhelm these civilizations because of their technology and their advancements. Okay, Columbian Exchange. This is a big important one. You know, you never know if they're going to throw in a period one question on this new exam. It'll probably have something to do with the Columbian Exchange. So make sure you do understand this. If you need to study it more, go out there and look on YouTube. There are videos. If you need more insight from us, let us know. So what is it? Is exchange of goods between the New World and Europe following 1492. So Columbus's colonization or exploration. So these are the type of goods. So the New World is going to be sending like items such as corn, tomatoes, and potatoes back to Europe, as well as gold and silver. So there's that exchange of goods. That means there has to be a return. The old world is going to send in some wheat, sugar, rice, and coffee into the new world. I bet figuring out that you could put sugar on things was life changing for people. It's like, man, I just put sugar on my tomatoes and now I have a Starburst or something. Tomato flavored Starburst chew. Actually, I have no idea. And then farm animals. I put farm animals because it's like horses, pigs, cows, chickens, sheep, goats. Basically brought old MacDonald over and he had his farm, E-I-E-I-O. And the farm animals actually make a huge, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Impact on, like, just the global, like, landscape, and pigs just like marching through established farms and just making them all gross and ungrowable. So it is a big impact, these farm animals. So let's talk about the impact the Columbian Exchange had on the old world. So a big one is the new crops, potatoes and corn specifically, leads to improved diets in Europe. Improved diets leads to longer life. Longer life leads to more people. So there's a population boom in Europe, which in turn, Europe starts to get overcrowded. So you have people wanting to come over into the New World and colonize. So that's a big impact in pushing people out of Europe to find, living space. And then it generated a profitable transatlantic trade that helped spark the European economy. So that it begins this, and we talk about it period two, the triangular trade, and this is kind of the start of it. These exchange of goods. It's like, oh, we can bring these New World goods over into Europe and sell them here and make money. We need to take advantage of that. All right, impact on the New World. Old World diseases slammed the Native American population. So that's kind of like the biggest impact that the Columbian Exchange had on the native population was the diseases that the Old World brought over to the native population, to a group of people who weren't immune to these diseases like smallpox, like the cold, like flu symptoms. They just take it and die. And this is what the little 90% is over here. 90% of the native population, some say, was decimated by these diseases. And so this leads to an easier path for Spain to control territory and to colonize, because these native populations were just dying and they had no answer for these diseases. And so Spain is conquesting through Central, South America, and Mexico. So let's look at just a little bit at the Spanish colony, kind of their goals and how they achieve those goals. So you have the colonizers, the Spanish colonizers. They want to spread the faith, so they want to open up Catholic missions, spread the Catholic faith, find these indigenous people and convert them to Catholicism. And they also want to extend the power and wealth of Spain through opening up new industry, that like if they found gold, any way to make Spain more powerful, they were going to do that. That means imperializing, taking over land, as well as, finding gold, silver, anything that's going to make Spain a lot of money. So the thing that they do is they use the encomienda system, and this is a good one and an important one to remember. It's to extract labor and tribute from the native peoples, meaning we're here as your overlords, technically. You need to work for us, and then what you mine or what you grow, you need to give most of that to us. You can keep some, but because we're protecting you, because we're in charge, we're actually going to ask you to give us 9 of those 10 corn cobs that you've farmed. And this is important because they basically can enforce their will on the natives and force them to work on these plantations, which are springing up now in more abundance in the New World. Sugar plantations, and then you have like cotton plantations, tobacco plantations, and stuff in North America and in different areas. So that's gonna, at first, it's working out for them, but we'll see here in just a minute that there's not enough of them to take advantage of that labor source. And then these guys, I'm going to slaughter this, encomienderos. Sorry for all my Spanish speakers out there. I probably just slaughtered that. So they kind of were in charge. They were like little thugs out there, enforcing this system, and they would be in charge of a village or a group of natives, and they would enforce different rules, and they're very brutal. Was what I'm trying to say, and they would force them to believe in Catholicism, beat, torture, kill if necessary, and so that the encomienda system was brutal to the native population. You have a Spanish. Make sure I look in my nifty book of. He was a priest, Bartolome de las Casas. He actually went after in writing the encomienda system, and he was against it, and he was for treating the native population more fair and with more respect. So it's just, you begin to see, the conquests in the New World. Immediately, the European people are treating native groups or groups different from them in a harsh manner. And then you have people who are outspoken against, like, no, we need to be equal, things need to be better. Kind of a pattern that you see throughout history, right? You got the natives here, you got the African slaves, the natives in North America, different groups outside of your traditional English settlers, and it just kind of evolves, and it's just something that we've always dealt with. Society in New Spain. So, because there was not a strong labor force of natives, the Spanish in the 1500s turned to enslaved Africans to start labor on sugar plantations and silver mines. Now, this is a big deal because we're going to start the slave trade into the New World, but they're using Africans because there's an abundance of them. and also they've built up an immunity to these diseases that have decimated the native population. So this is where we start seeing the slave trade, the African slaves coming in and working on these plantations, and then racial hierarchy, just kind of how society in general is structured in New Spain. And what I have here, so the Spanish are at the top of this pyramid. So really quick, this is not going to last long, but you have a pyramid at the top are the Spanish, and of course at the bottom are the natives. Mestizos, Spaniard Indian, so they've mixed there, and the mulattoes, the Spaniard African, fell in between that pyramid, so they would fall in here. And they just justified this way of living because they just felt like they were a higher being, higher people, more civilized than the natives and the Africans, and they did belong in fact at the top, despite not originating in the New World. Okay, so let's talk Pueblo Revolt. This is another important one to know and to understand. So as the Spanish continued colonizing into the New World, they eventually get into North America, and they gain control of the Pueblo people, which is in New Mexico today, and they force them to work and worship in Catholic missions. And remember what I said earlier, that the natives were very religious, and they're very they viewed religion as very important. So being forced to worship in something you don't necessarily believe in is probably hard and hard to deal with. So Pope, he was part of these Pueblo people. He resented the Spanish and everything that they were doing. He wanted a return to the old ways, back to their old traditions, back to their old religion and things that they believed in. So he organized and led a rebellion against the Spanish. They burned some missions and some homes, and to give you the number, they killed hundreds of Spaniards while destroying their buildings and burning their fields. So they pushed the Spanish out. This is like the first time you see this big, this rebellion against a higher power, and it's important to note because that's going to happen throughout the course of the United States history. So he rebels, they push him out, but that does not lead to peace. I mean, he pushes him out. They get to go back to their old ways of life for a blink of an eye. He dies. The Spanish come back and take the area back, and continue with their conquest. But what they did do, so this is kind of like, so it kind of worked out, is they did adopt a policy of greater cultural accommodation. So they see it's like, we got to go in there, and these people have certain beliefs. We need to respect that, and we need to be okay with those beliefs and kind of prevent these rebellions from happening again. So that is period 1. Tomorrow I want to get a period 2 up and going, and just kind of get all these periods on here, and then give you guys as long as you need to work on the writing portions of each period. So here's our first one. So this is a short answer question based off of colonization, Spanish colonization, and the Columbian Exchange. I'm not going to sit here and read it word for word, but what I want you to do is I'm going to go out of this. So if you were to search, which I encourage you to do it, I just typed into Google APUSH skills, and there are 9 of them. This is a website, another website that you can use for a review. It's Magoosh.com. Anyway, the 9 APUSH historical thinking skills, things that, and it says right here, the AP US History course and exam expects students to master several key skills that enable them to effectively study, understand, and interpret the past. At least one of these 9 APUSH historical thinking skills is tested on every single question on the exam. So I just want to show you where this question, what skills are used on this question, and then what I want you to do is, at least my students, I want you to submit an assignment where you actually do this. So first, let's just a couple key things that you need to remember when doing your short answer is to label it 1A, 1B, 1C. Sorry, baby came in and asked me what I was doing. She was really interested when I said doing a presentation for AP US History. Just kidding, she wasn't at all. Okay, so remember when you write out your response to do it 1A, 1B, and 1C, so I can find it. Easy, and a couple things, and I've mentioned this in class before we were kicked out of school, is be specific. Don't just be vague or general in your responses. So for example, briefly explain how one specific historical event or development not explicitly mentioned in the excerpts could be used to support Richard's interpretation. So what you'll do is you'll mention a specific historical event or development that supports this guy's and supports this guy's. That's B, that's C. I'm not looking for some like, well, the natives were just like being treated unfairly and stuff. No, give me some good historical specific evidence that so I can see, oh, you actually threw in this thing here and you understand what it means and how it applies to this excerpt. So remember that. Be specific, otherwise I'll tell you to redo it, and I know you love to do that. So really quick, let's connect this to the skills that you need to know. So, the first skill is analyzing evidence, content, and source. And this is like the basic skill that you need to know probably for most things, because there's always some sort of document attached to either a writing, a question, except for the long essay, but who knows if you guys are doing that. So anyway, analyze evidence, understand what the author is talking about, and on our thing here, it says briefly explain one specific historical difference between Richard's and Nunn's and Queen's interpretations. So there, you're analyzing. That's the first skill. You're telling me why are these two things different, and you're doing it in as much detail as you possibly can. That is so important. Please do it in as much detail as you possibly can. The next skill, interpretation. This skill deals with analyzing secondary sources. Oh, that's what those are. Those in which a historian is interpreting the past. To demonstrate this skill, you should be able to examine a secondary source and describe the author's argument, how well the author supports the argument with evidence, how it relates to other historical interpretations. So, briefly explain an historical difference between Richard's and Nunn's, and that's exactly that APUSH skill that you need to do. We need to see you pull out evidence from here that tells us what their interpretations are, that we can see that you have analyzed this correctly and have written it out the right way. And then finally, comparison. This skill deals with making historical connections by comparing and contrasting events, societies, and perspectives. To demonstrate this skill, you should be able to compare the points of view found in multiple primary and secondary sources, find the similarities and differences, make comparisons across different time periods. So if we look at this, the last B and C briefly explain how one specific historical event or development not explicitly mentioned in the excerpts could be used to support Richard's interpretation. So you're doing that stuff. You're analyzing, you're finding, you're comparing. We go back to this. You are finding the similarities and differences between events, people, societies. Compare the points of view found in multiple primary seconds. So this is what we need you to be doing. Please, I'll even put this link on Canvas so you can familiarize yourself with this. But I'm hoping that as we go through each period, that we can cover most of these through these short answer examples. Okay, so remember, if you guys have any questions about period 1, please leave them in the comments, or I'll have a spot for you to provide that. Okay, you guys are great. Have a good Thursday. Hope you have a nice party planned tomorrow. Maybe FaceTime party, TikTok party. Doesn't matter. Just have fun. Take it easy. Spring break's almost here. See you guys.